Bring this meeting to order, please, for the Board of Directors regular meeting of January 21st, 2021. And in honor of her extraordinary evening, I would like to ask Ms. Melissa Smith to lead us in the flag salute. I want to get this meeting started right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's my microphone on.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. So we could have a call to orders now. Just a roll call, please. Yes.
Yes.
Director Lang.
Here.
Director Holt.
Here.
Director Hupper.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And just as a reminder, as Ms. Reinders decides to depart, to make sure that you keep your microphones on as you're speaking, because she will be listening from a remote location to keep us track on our records and the minutes. This evening we have special presentation from the Therapeutics Unit, and I can see some people over there kind of hidden by the screen. Were you going to introduce them?
Yeah.
Okay, if you could, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Nichols. I think we have Devin Hebert is coming up. I never say it right. Herbert.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Nichols, and for allowing.
Oh, it's on now. Yeah. Sorry. Looking at the presentation. Awesome. All right, can you hear me now? What? I've always been challenged. Thank you, Chair Nichols and directors, for allowing Cheryl Ju, the Therapeutic Recreation Coordinator, and me to share with you what we've been doing for the last 10 months, and more specifically, what the Therapeutic Recreation Unit and Old Meadows Community Center how we've served the community during a pandemic. So just like every other community center, in March, we were told to shut down. And so we stay connected with families through Facebook and through emails and phone calls. And then in June, we were allowed to offer camps. And due to the vulnerability of the population we serve, we were kind of crossing our fingers, hoping for registration. We didn't know what we were gonna get this summer. So the presentation is a nutshell of what we've been doing for over the last 10 months. I broke it into how we serve the youth, the teens, and then also the adults with special needs. Starting with the youth, so the Therapeutic Recreation Unit always offers 3 summer camps, one for the youth at Old Meadows Community Center, and then 2 teen young adult camps, one at the Crowley House and one at the Old Meadows Community Center. With the youth camp, it always has a late start into midsummer because of the extended school year. So that allowed us the opportunity to kind of launch some brand new mini summer camps this summer. And we did that with our Camp Junior and our Messy Art Camp. And those went so great this summer. It's a lot of fun. So those went so great this summer that the parents just kept asking if we would keep extending it and do more and more and more of the camps. And as long as we had the resources, we just kept extending that camp. And it worked out because our youth camp, when that was ready to start, the COVID numbers started to rise in the community. And so we saw a drop in our registration and weren't ready to launch our youth camp yet. But eventually we did. And all the camps just went successful. Our biggest challenge is that our summer camps are heavily supported by volunteers. In 2019, we had at least 50 volunteers and almost 500 volunteer hours just within our summer camps. And these summer camps just are really hard to run without volunteer support. So this summer, we really had to decrease how many volunteers that we had so that we would maintain the safety of how many people we were exposing everyone to, and make sure it's social distancing, and just had control over the environment. And then we also had a Zumba Kids, and I really wanted to point this class out because it's still running. It's such a great program because it is a collaboration with a local nonprofit, Fit for a Cause, with Cindy Rakowitz. And it just we're able to offer it at a low cost for the community. Next are teens. Before I start with the teens, I kind of wanted to give you an overview of what Old Meadows Park looked like this summer. And I won't tell the other supervisors and other community centers that you guys probably would agree with me that Old Meadows Park is the coolest park in town. And so it is very widely popular, and amongst the other supervisors too. So Scott Buchanan of the Cultural Unit reached out to me and said, hey, I can't open my camps in the theater this summer. I need a park. So I was like, okay. So we had to work out a lot of logistics for it, but we made it happen. And there were days that we accommodated at least 100 kids at Old Meadows Park this summer. And it was so cool to see that all these kids are out there, but it was just, we had to crank out 100 temperature checks and health checks and just make sure there was no traffic. And it was quite the teamwork between us, but the park was so crowded and I still needed to run 2 more camps. So we were lucky enough that our peer mentor camp is always held at Crowley House. It's their home, and they clean the house and have their chores, and it's their hangout area and their space. And then we were lucky enough to have the Global Community Center to host our other camp this summer. And it just provided some new space, and so close to Caneo Creek that they spent a lot of time over there outdoors, and it was a really fun place to be. Yeah. Sorry, let me go back. So when I knew I had this opportunity to be here tonight, I reached out to the families and asked them to, if they wanted the opportunity as well to share how these programs have impacted them over the last 10 months. So here is one of the parents.
Having Crowley House open during this busy time has been the best thing that has happened in 2020. We got an awesome goal in school, including socialization skills. It is very hard to work on these goals during Zoom. The CRPD Crowley House has allowed Austin to keep on track and not withdraw. Austin thrives when he's with friends that are nothing. We are so beyond thankful for all the hard work Devin and CRPD staff have put into making this camp happen.
So next would be our adults. And to give a little bit of a map, typically if you have a child, they would graduate high school about 18 and then go to either career school or college, and then hopefully move out of the house sometime or another with a job but if you have a child with special needs, you learn that you will have a child forever under your roof. And so typically they would go to high school and then a post-secondary program through the school district until about age 21, 22. And then they go into an adult day program through the regional center. And those adult day programs close down in March as well. And so in June, we had our parents calling us and saying, what do you have for our adult child with special needs? We are going crazy. We need to get back to work. What do you have for us? And so one day I was on a call with Rochelle and Tim, and I was like, well, we don't usually do summer camps for adults, but they can't be home alone, and these parents need to work, and it's it's important for them as well. So Rochelle and Tim are so supportive, and they're like, let's do it. So we launched our first adult social and friends program, and that program is still going strong today. There's 14 registered. And it's recently just found a new home at the Crawley House. So they now have chores every day, cleaning. They take out the trash and they pick up after themselves and make sure that the bathroom is clean at the end of the day, and just loving the space over there and having their own space. We didn't think that the program would be going to this day, but it is. So that is our adult social and friends program.
Other than the nourishment that she's making for, the nothing for 30 for caring for her son with Parkinson's. We have spent years of seeking Chris in having a meaningful life. Meaningful in being the godson of a therapeutic partner lab, which I believe is probably the best program of its kind in the country. I was a board member for the Autism Society of Los Angeles for years, and was also involved in national issues. So I was aware of what programs are available throughout the country. When the virus hit, everything considered was canceled in 24 hours. This is excruciatingly difficult, as Chris's functioning depends highly on having structured, meaningful day-to-day activities. Then Dr. West came to once again with the adult exam. Chris loved it and has made all of this tolerable. As a public health nurse and supervisor, I can say the program is meticulous as far as following public health guidelines for COVID. The kindness of all the staff and wonderful programs have been integral in keeping Chris happy in the community and not a lifetime locked-in institution, as many of the experts told us it is.
So, so that was summer. Our summer camps were, a lot, just was a lot this summer, doing all 4 camps plus some extra little camps, and then just having a full load at Old Meadows Park. We do a couple other programs. We do a dance class, virtual games, Zumba, Zoom yoga. We're trying to launch some new programs as well. But just the meat of our resources right now are the camps that we do offer. It is really consistent that all the families just say Zoom and virtual programs don't work for their families. They're just not connecting over Zoom and not getting the social interaction that they need, and don't know how to follow along.
As a family, we are known to full for our adult patients of the Syracuse University. On her way home from her mother's treatment for 6 months, our daughter was so depressed and we almost became frustrated. Her OCD and anxiety was fully out of control, and we were all miserable. Since starting this program in October, she's had a huge turnaround. She is happy and has something to look forward to. It is now amazing to have someone who's for her to go during this pandemic. She loves it and is so much fun. Carolina just going to do such a good job because we can't thank all the enough in this program. It is truly a bright spot for our family in a time when we definitely need it.
So summer ended, and before summer ended, we actually reached out to our families and said, what do you need from us in the fall? We still have these restrictions of just being able to offer camps and fitness classes. And they all said, we just want what we have right now. We need what you have, what we're doing right now, which is a 9 to 2 camp. So like I said, we still are continuing our adult social and friends program. And then our teen programs condensed into one, and our youth camp both switched over to school camps. And so we immediately learned how to use, the Thousand Oaks CVUSD Canvas and Zoom and Google Meet, and learned who has speech one day and who has OT one day and PE one day. And there's so many logistics, but the families were so flexible and accommodating, and it turned out to be a great program. The schools have now since turned over to blended learning. So the camps still are here today. However, they just kind of shifted hours. So many of the students are now going to school in the mornings, and then they get bused over to Old Meadows and either continue their school day or have a camp day.
First of all, Mary loves routine. She really struggled when things were shut down in March. We saw increased behaviors, anxiety, and overall depression from her because she didn't fully understand what was happening, and she thrives on routine. Once she was able to start going to the care unit, things turned around. She loves having a plan for the day, going somewhere to see sign out for the day. She was much happier all around from that thing. She really enjoyed the contact and loved having daily routine. On another note, as another of five kids, I truly appreciate being able to send her to the school camp to get her schoolwork done. I was having a difficult time keeping up with 5 remote learning schedules, and Mary was falling behind in her schoolwork, missing some gym classes, and not finishing her homework because I simply could not keep up with all of it. Sending Mary to the CRPD Unit enabled her to get more out of her schoolwork and have more supervision with it than I can ever do. With all the other responsibilities I have. She gets the attention she needs and does her homework at camp so we can spend time together as a family when she gets home.
So lastly, as you can see in what the parents stated, that these programs are not just childcare and not just camps. They provide so much. When they started coming to us in June, they forgot how to engage in conversations. They forgot that they needed to get up and eat a breakfast and not just go back to the room and watch TV. They needed to get out of the house and have structure to their day. A lot of them forgot that in public, we have to lock the restroom because, you don't do that in your own home. And so we had to relearn a lot of new things, that the social rules that you don't speak of. And we just saw an increase in their emotional well-being. Families were just able to get back to work and their routine as well. And parents needed a break from their kids, from the challenging behaviors. And so it just provided a lot of emotional wellness for families as well as the special needs, adults, teens, and youth that we provided programs to. So I think that's it. Oh no, last letter.
The CR unit is such an important part of Eva's life. And to be perfectly honest, our family's life. It has always been. We have depended on this program to bring happiness, enrichment, and growth to Eva's life. She has grown up in this program, and I just can't imagine how life without it. As much as we have always appreciated all of the camps, programs, and fun activities the CR unit has provided, it wasn't until the pandemic hit that we realized how truly blessed we are because of all of you. You have always brought a little normal to our lives, but when we need normal the most, it was just the way when COVID was on the world. However, a light was always shining at the end of the tunnel for Eva. CR unit was still somehow able to provide safe and modified summer programs for our special girl. Eva was smiling and happy despite quarantine. She was one lucky girl. Fast forward to August, and CR unit came through again with the school camp program. Ava was able to attend school virtually with support and fun. Keeping strict protocols, Ava has been able to learn in a safe and engaging environment. Then, when the hybrid model came out, we modified the program again to fit the needs of all the kids. I don't know how you did it, but I'm beyond grateful and thankful. Ava is happy and content in a world that is filled with anything but that. She has had her whole life disrupted because of COVID, but somehow you have kept Ava's world consistent, normal, safe, and happy. Our children depend on routine for their happiness and survival. Thanks to all of you, Ava is thriving, progressing, and happy in such a sweet time in our world. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I don't know what we would have done without all of you. I am forever thankful and grateful.
And in my letter to them, I expressed to them that I am thankful for you guys, for the support of the Therapeutic Recreation Unit, and that we wouldn't have this unit if it wasn't for you guys. And so thank you guys all for your continuous support throughout everything. So somebody.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Herber. I'm going to circle around the table here to see if there's any comments, starting here with Director Holt for comments or questions.
Just comments. I mean, that is so impressive, what you've done beyond what you used to do to cope with this. It's just unbelievable. And I have it on. I would suggest maybe, I don't know, but I think we should maybe publicize this and let the public know just what's going on there and who's benefiting. The downside would be you probably get more applications than you could handle. But still, I mean, I think the public has to know that this is part of Canarec and Park District. And, you know, it's unbelievable. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Holt. Director Heffer.
Well, my initial reaction was, wow, what you folks have done. I'm sure it's with a staff of 20 or 30 people who are doing all of this, right? No? Really? Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, you know, so many of our recreation programs have been reinvented, and the staff have been doing so much to keep the folks in our community active and engaged. But what you and the TR unit have been doing for our special needs population is just absolutely spectacular. I agree with Director Holt that if there is some way of letting the community as a whole know what we're doing so that you guys get credit for this, I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful. One of the earlier meetings I made the comment, you were talking about some of the special activities and socialization activities that the kids have, but made the comment a few months ago that I really missed one of my favorite annual events, the Starlight Ball. And I sure hope that we're well beyond the point come next December that we're going to be able to have that again, because that's such a special event. So for myself, and I think for all of us, I want to thank you and what the folks at TR have been doing for all of the children, teens, and adults with special needs in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to circle around to the video screen to Director Cusworth if you have any comments or questions.
Yes, I'd like to say I'm the same as everybody else, just very impressed with what you're doing. It was very impressive what you were doing when you were not having to worry about a pandemic, and then to be able to adjust. It's a very wonderful and heartwarming thing. I do have a question. I'm wondering, what is the percentage of the children and adults that are coming to your program that are members of the Conejo Valley community?
You mean versus that are out of district?
Yes, I'm just wondering, are most of the kids in district, or do you have about half and half, or how large is your community?
Yeah, I would say 90% are in district. Yeah.
Because I know of some people who have lived out of district as a school teacher who have special needs children, and when I've told them about our therapeutic program, they were quite impressed, saying they didn't really see that much happening out where they lived. So I know that this is a unique and a wonderful job that you're doing. Thank you very much for the people of our community and those who are able to come out and also participate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Ling.
Yes, thank you, Devin. Every time we have a presentation over the years on the therapeutic unit, as other directors have said, it just makes us so proud to have this part of our district offerings. And I've asked this question before and sort of alluded by Director Cusworth that other rec and park districts may have some programs, but nothing to the extent that we offer at the different facilities and serving the needs of individuals. And listening to some of those parent letters, readings, this is their kids' I was going to say anchor, but it's their safe haven, and with all this pandemic stuff, that this really provides some secure living for these kids and experience. So again, congratulations. And I too, like Director Hupper, was wondering, did any of the adult participants in the Silver Starlight Ball ask about it this year?
Oh, yes, we got a lot of calls. And most of them were just saying, when will we be able to do it again? When, that's the question of the day every day is, when can we go back to bowling? When can we go back to doing our cooking classes? When can we go, do the silver slide ball? So, I do have a little bit of a backup activity I kind of want to do that's related to the silver slide ball to bring the band back and do an event.
Excuse
So
me. Go ahead, Devin.
that's okay. So I do, if we can't have the silver slide ball this year, then I kind of have an idea brewing to bring the band to an event, to do an event with the band still. So hopefully we could do something similar if we can't do it. But yes, there is a question every day from participants, when will they get back to their routines of bowling and dances and cooking classes?
One last comment. You mentioned what an awesome park Old Meadows is.
Mhm.
And I used to take our granddaughters when they were much younger there. And one of the aspects of that park, having it all fenced in, really makes it a comfortable place to bring your small children, because, they can't go running away and get into other areas. But one last story, I was visiting with a young mother, and she had 2 children. She no longer lived in the Canal Valley. She was like in North Hollywood or something like that, but she grew up a block or 2 from Old Meadows Park. And she said there's no park like it in the valley. And she brings her children there just so they can experience some of the things that she did growing up. So Old Meadows is, one of the jewels in our community. And thanks to our maintenance and all of our landscape people and so forth, keeping it up. That's really great.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
thank you, and congratulations to all your staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lang. I'd like to publicly confess that Old Meadows is probably my favorite park. I think it was our closest park when our kids were growing up. I mean, we've had birthdays there, family reunions, fishing for both crawdads and soccer balls in the creek, playing soccer, playground, taking classes there, everything. Then my daughter, after she finished her social work, she actually helped with the socialization program over there. So I mean, we've had the gamut over at that facility and been there many, many times, hiking, dog walking, you name it all. Love the place. What struck me as I was listening to you, but then also hearing the family comments, was a few terms: normal, routine, and socialization. None of those seem to fit with the year 2020. And yet you seem to have brought that to this group. So thank you for finding a way to make that happen. Obviously a very unique group, and I think a very tight-knit group that you work with. The other thing that struck me is, while you may be meeting the needs of individuals, you're really meeting the needs of families, and probably more so than any program that we offer. Is it's really a family activity, a family event, even though you might be having them for even a large part of the day, but you're really serving the needs of the family. So again, thank you for doing that. I did have a couple of questions. You talked about camps and programs. How do you distinguish between a camp and a program?
So our camps are about 5 hours a day, and they're either 15 hours a week or 25 hours a week. So that's our camp. So that's right now we have 3 camps running, and that's quite a bit of our resources. So it runs from 15 to 25 hours a week, the camps do. And then our programs are weekly programs that are about an hour long.
Okay. And do you find that there's a lot of crossover between those, or you have certain families that stick with one or the other?
Right now, we have those families that are comfortable have built their trust and their safety in us, knowing that we're following all the guidelines and protocols. So we have our adults, we have a large group of our adults that are having a lot of crossover because they're comfortable in our programs and want to do as much as possible. It's really hard for the youth right now, and our teens were starting to get crossover in our, as we open more sports, fitness classes.
Okay, okay. And then as a follow-up on you're talking about your young adult program, and my heart goes out to those families because it is, it's a lifelong commitment for them. And they need that assistance and they appreciate that assistance. But is there like a age out type of a situation, or as long as they want to come, they're welcome to come?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Now, with some of these impacts that we've heard about, a lot of times the emotional and social needs are not really fully addressed, and especially the media doesn't report a lot of these things. With what you've heard from your families and what you've observed, do you feel that the program is able to somewhat make this routine for your participants, and that they feel that there is a sense of normality, but there is still a challenge when it comes to those socialization skills, the emotional health of those folks? Or I don't know if you feel you're in a position to even answer something like that, but just kind of curious.
Yeah, there are some participants that come to us still daily and says, when are we getting back to these programs? When are we going back to our day programs? So there are some that do understand that this is a temporary thing, where there's some that well, I've been doing this since June now. This is my new life and it's my new normal. We have participants that the parents said when they were shut down and before we started programs, their son would wake up every day and say, another day of boring day. And or it was another boring day. So the mental health is back, or it's, we've gotten them back into being able to socialize and look forward to the programs every single day. So, our adult program, they send out a weekly schedule of what they're going to do the next day. And the parents love it because they're like, oh, we put it on a refrigerator, and they look forward to this day they're doing chair bingo and fitness, and this day they're tie-dyeing shirts. So it definitely is really cool to see the progression from June to now. And
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, because it's very heartwarming to hear and read those stories from the families, because I know it is truly a family activity and a family appreciation for what you do. So again, I know that this is kind of a blend between recreation and social services, what you do. And you really, and art and dance, and everything else, you kind of do it all.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I don't know if Ms. Ju was planning to say something, or if she cares to say something.
It's my support, and I just wanted to introduce her to that.
Well, thank you for coming and being with us.
Chair
Oh,
Nichols,
yes, Director
I have a
Lane.
quick addendum. You're talking about your children at the park growing up. My very first experience in memory there was when I was coaching my son's Pee-wee 5- and 6-year-old soccer team. My very first game, my opponent was Mike Berger, who used to be a director on the Rec and Park District. And so that was the first time I met Mike, and long time I'm a friend. So he did, but I'll explain that. Chuck might know the situation, but anyway.
Good information. Thank you, Ms. Herbert. Ms. Ju, thank you for being with us tonight, and thank you so much for your work. Okay, with that, moved on our agenda to items from the public. Mr. Segedy, do we have any public participants this evening? Okay, thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Ms. Holt and
I'll second.
and Director Huffer. Hearing no objections, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Well,
Oh,
supposed to be a roll call
we
vote.
do have it. We do have a video participant, so we do need to have a roll call vote for
Yeah.
that. So, is Aileen going to jump in on this, or do you want me to just take care of that
I can
myself?
do it.
Okay,
Uh,
if you would please.
Okay, Director Nichols,
Yes.
Director Cussworth,
Yes.
Director Lang,
Yes.
Director Holt,
Yes.
and Director Huffer.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is a consent calendar. We have items 6A and 6B. Is there any comments, or if not, motion to approve? Director Heffer,
I'd like to move approval of consent calendar items A and B.
I'll second.
and a second from Director Holt.
What a duo.
All right, if no other comments or questions, we could have a roll call vote, please.
Director Nichols,
Yes.
Director Cussworth,
Yes.
Director Lang,
Yes,
Director Holt,
Here, yes.
Director Huffer.
Yes,
Thank you. And next is deferred matters, and I don't see we have anything there. Next is item for discussions. I don't see anything there. Next is new items, and we have our annual audit report. And is that going to be directly from Ms. Smith or Mr. Fiedel? Did you want to weigh in on that?
Oh, I can just very briefly say this evening is all about the district's finances, and so Melissa's going to have the next 4 reports, and which good. It's all ties it together, kind of helps you look at things and make some decisions, knowing as fresh in your mind as possible what's going on financially. So with that, I'm going to kick it off to Melissa to introduce our auditors and go through the first item, the annual audit report.
Thank you. So this is our second year with Rogers, Anderson, Melody, and Scott, and we have Veronica Hernandez on the Zoom. She's been our point person this year through the whole audit process, which has been expressly unique as so much has had to be remote because of COVID. So she's done a great job and working with our team, and we have Scott on there as well. And so I will transfer it over to them to give a brief presentation.
Thanks, Melissa. So I have a brief presentation that I would like to share my screen with you. One second.
that
Can you
where
guys
the
see
audit
it?
took place?
Okay, so like Melissa said, I'm Veronica Hernandez. I'm the senior in charge of this audit. So I have just a small presentation. So I would like to begin with the responsibility of the auditor. So our responsibilities is to audit the financial statements in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards.
Veronica, we're not seeing.
Oh, you're not seeing it?
Nope.
We're seeing your nice beach picture.
I know, it's beautiful.
Okay, wait. Okay, can you see it now?
There you go.
Okay, I was wondering why it was showing up over there. Okay. Okay. No, hold on. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, well, we'll just do it like this. Okay, so sorry, so let me start from the beginning. So the responsibilities of the auditor, our responsibility is to audit the financial statements in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards, with the government auditing standards and the state controller's minimum audit requirements for special districts. In planning our audit, we basically express an opinion as to whether management's financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And we provide reasonable assurance, not absolute, about whether those statements are fairly presented. In the audit process, we obtain an understanding of the district's internal controls over various transaction cycles. We make inquiries, inspect documents, and perform walkthroughs. We conduct a detailed audit of financial records by inspecting relevant documents such as bank statements, invoices, and cash receipts. We inquire about various or unusual transactions and confirm cash and investment balances. We perform analytical procedures and look for significant variances or unusual transactions and compare those to budgeted amounts. We use the data analytics over cash disbursements and payroll data and read the minutes of the board meetings. In completing our audit, there are a few required communications The first is a communication to those charged with governance, also known as a SAS 114. This basically communicates any significant findings or any other communications we would like for you to know. The second is a report over internal controls, which identifies any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And the last is our audit report, which we express an opinion. And then there's other communications that could arise from performing an audit, and that is the management comment letter. This communicates any recommendations that we note during our audit that we feel that it would be a great value to the district and could help improve internal controls. Lastly, we express an opinion. We expressed an unmodified, otherwise known as a clean opinion over the financial statements. The financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. All significant accounting principles have been consistently applied. Accounting estimates appear reasonable and disclosures have been properly reflected. So this concludes our presentation. I'll leave it up for questions, and I believe Melissa will be going over the management comment letter.
Any questions for them from the board?
And board, any questions? Just before we proceed, will there be any more information from the team, or is it they're just basically we're just telling us what their scope of work was?
So they're doing the scope of work. I was going to review the kind of summary of the audit and go into the management comment letter with the corrective actions and things like that.
Okay, so we can probably hear the presentation in its entirety. They'll be with us, and we can ask
Yes,
questions.
they're staying on through the whole thing.
All right, so we'll hold off on questions then, if you don't mind, since you're going to be with us through the evening. By the way, thank you all for being with us. And then we'll wait for the entirety of the presentation, and then perhaps if there's questions, we'll try and get them all at once. So thank you. So Ms. Smith, if you'd continue, please.
Absolutely. So I would draw your attention to page 37. It's the management's discussion of financial an analysis that includes the financial highlights, which are probably the big key points that you want to take away from any audit outside of the clean opinion that we received. Our net position is $159 million, and this is an increase of a little over 6.5 million. Some of that is due to the SoCal Edison settlement. Also because of the COVID impacts, our expenditures were reduced. So some of that is because of that. We have a large amount in the unassigned fund balance, which we'll be going over as part of the reserve policy discussion, and it also includes the entire amount of that SoCal Edison money. And then the other big highlight is because of the huge efforts of this district to address the pension and post-retirement liabilities, that we've been able to address a lot of those, and we're at 96% funded, and this shows the current pension stabilization fund balance is at 3.6. So those were the big highlights of the audit itself and the clean opinion. And so if you have any questions on those types of things, happy to go over them. And then I'll go over the comments from the auditor.
Just one quick question then on the funding of 96%.
Yeah.
Will you be covering anything future as far as what's to be done, if anything at all with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to go on to the comments that were made for recommendations to improve our internal controls. So, and I think I even saved the page numbers for you all.
Good.
So page 133 is where Veronica and her team identified a few findings and recommendations to improve internal controls. Again, this wasn't that they found something material or that we did something, I think Cheryl's phrase was illegal, immoral, or fattening in anything that we did, but some good recommendations to improve internal controls. So the first two items are related to our assets, specifically to how we capitalize them and how we dispose of those. So the first portion for capitalization, again, it wasn't that we were doing something wrong, it's just that we didn't have a board adopted policy about how we did it. So we were proposing a corrective action that we would develop a policy for the board to approve about how we're going to capitalize those assets. The second portion was requiring a recommendation to have documentation when we support the disposal of assets. So we decided that we were going to include that in that same policy. And so that's the next item on this. The next part of this item is that policy for you to review. So we agreed with their recommendations and we're bringing you the corrective action for it. The last two, they're very similar. It's regarding the segregation of duties for the steps required to make a payment. And Veronica, if I misstate anything, feel free to chime in. Basically, there's three kind of steps that have to happen for any type of payment, whether it be to a vendor or to an employee for payroll. The information for the payee, be it an employee or a vendor, has to be put into the system. The information on the payment, like the invoice or the timesheet, needs to be put in the system. And then there has to be the authorization of the actual payment itself. Currently, we have the same person doing the first two steps, and then a separate person always does the third. So we have two people. We never have one person handle the whole transaction through, but the recommendation was that we segregate those responsibilities across different staff. The volume of the work that we do doesn't seem to justify adding an additional staff member to handle just that one additional step. So we worked with Veronica and her team and came up with this solution of every other week, I, who would not be normally part of that system, the payment system, is going to review the audit reports for both our vendors and employees, meaning any changes in that system to their address, their pay rate, anything like that, I get the report of it and I have to review what the change was and who made the change. So that is our recommendation about how we would reduce the risk of somebody having too much control over entering people or vendors into the system and cutting a check. So that's the summary of the corrective action plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Do you want me to bring my questions up now, or are you still continuing?
For the corrective action plan, absolutely. Otherwise,
Okay.
I'll go on to the policy.
Yes, I do have a couple of questions, which, by the way, I did forward in advance so that Ms. Smith was fully aware
Yeah.
of what my question was. But I did have a question for the auditors, and Veronica, and again, thank you for being with us this evening. But in the items, the findings for your items number 3 and 4, which is talking to the fact that staff are doing or assigned tasks that perhaps there could be some concern, not that you found any, but that there's a potential for that just based on the operation itself. And your recommendation was to segregate those responsibilities. And in talking with Ms. Smith, she indicated that they proposed this alternative option, which you were in agreement with as far as what they had proposed. But the question I had was, as you review a situation like this, and obviously there's some type of a red flag that brought this to your attention, what was it that catches your attention with something like this? And why did you suggest that particular recommendation of staff, additional staff, or at least segregation? I guess on our part, we were talking about additional staff. And will the proposed action, I guess, resolve that issue, or at least make it easier for us to see any issues that may have come up? If you can do your best to try and interpret what I'm asking.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, so we always recommend, those two, that whether, like for the vendor changes, we always recommend that the same person that's processing payroll, cash disbursements is not the one that's making the changes to the vendor, because there is a chance that, they could make a change into the system and then it could get, missed or something. And like, if you're thinking about like a malicious activity or something, there's a chance that it could get missed and then it can go through the whole process and the check will go out, paid to not a real vendor. So when I discussed with Melissa, there are instances where we have clients that, it's not possible for one person to, or it's not possible for the entity to segregate those duties just because they don't have the staff available. And that's fine, as long as we have a compensating control. And so a compensating control would basically be a control that's in place that would reduce the sorry, I lost my train of thought. Reduce the possibility that a fictitious vendor, could go out. Same thing for the payroll. It's the same thing. The payroll, the same person was changing the pay rates and had, was processing payroll. So those compensating controls help to mitigate the risk that a material misstatement could go out or something, malicious or something that's not related to the entity that would have gone out. So that's fine. And I do approve, those, not approve, but I do agree with the corrective actions that we have discussed.
If I can jump in real quick, I'm sorry. One of the things that we look at as well is, it's a cost benefit relationship within the district itself. Is the cost of hiring another staff person to mitigate that risk worth the benefit that you're going to derive? And if you can come up with like Veronica said, a mitigating control that, you don't have to hire a new individual to do that, then that's acceptable as well, as long as the control is implemented and followed.
Yeah, thank you both. I'm a little sensitive to this because in a previous job situation, we did have some concerns expressed and unfortunately found some discrepancies, which led to the creation of an entire internal auditing organization within the organization itself. And I know we have a small organization, and so you already addressed this, and that was my question as well, is, what size of an organization do you see that there's adequate staff to be able to do this? Or is there an intermediate step where maybe it's just a reassignment of responsibilities? And, is there various ways that you address this, but is the proposed solution acceptable in your view?
Yes, yeah, and there was also reviewing and their internal controls. There was also other compensating controls that were in place for like the cash disbursements. There are several other people who review, the check before it actually goes out, and like, they review it and sign it and stuff. So there were other compensating controls. Same thing for the payroll. There was one other person that would review the personal action forms against all the changes in the pay rates. We weren't able to verify it because there weren't like any physical signatures or anything like that, but that was a process that they did have in place. So there were other compensating controls that did kind of help to mitigate the risk for those two controls.
Okay, and with the scope of your audit, would it be under your purview to assess, for example, cash handling? Because you're not really doing a cash handling audit, but with your level of review at this point, would something like that raise to the level where you may recommend a cash handling audit if you found something that warranted that?
Yeah, I'll answer. Yes, one of the things we will do is periodically we'll try to go to do site visits and observe cash handling at sites, any site that takes in recreation fees or anything like that. But yeah, and we do go over the cash receipts process with staff. And then if we did find something, again, it would be the same situation where we would make a recommendation or report a finding and have a recommendation and go from there.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And like I said, I have no indication whatsoever that that's warranted with our organization. I'm speaking on some experience in the previous situation, and I know how that goes. And you want to make sure our staff is protected foremost. Obviously, the district is protected. And I know, unfortunately, things happen that way. So I just want to make sure that through your process, at least there's some level of certainty that this process as recommended and then also as followed will meet the needs of our district. Any other questions in this? Okay. Director Lang?
Will there be an opportunity to, at the end of the presentation, to ask questions, or?
Oh, sure. I'm gonna go over the policy that,
Yeah.
is the second part, and then.
Yeah, I'll have my question at the very end.
Thank you.
So the next part of this item is the policy that was recommended that we establish.
We can't really hear her.
I'm sorry, I forgot to turn on my mic. Aleen's gonna have it with me. So the last part is the policy that we had recommended for the capitalization and depreciation of capital assets and the disposal of the property. We had an established policy on page 40 about the disposal of district-owned property. We contemplated doing a red line, but you'd have almost the entire document red line. So we're just doing the new policy would replace that, includes both the disposal and the capitalization of those assets. Again, it's documenting what we already do for the capitalization of assets and includes the recommendations about documentation when we do dispose of assets. And I got to give Tom credit on this. He did it in record time, and yeah, it was great. So any further questions on that, I'm happy to take.
So any questions on the policy or
In
the
general,
presentation in general? Yes, Director Ling.
Yeah, I have a question of Veronica and her firm. And Ms. Smith mentioned this is your second year as our auditors of our district. And I don't recall the findings in the corrective action plan of your first audit. Now, these situations that you identified in these 4 paragraphs, they existed last time too, but they weren't identified. They didn't require notification. I'm just kind of curious why this time and not the last time.
Well, I'll answer. The first year is a little more cumbersome in what we're doing. You know, we're gaining an understanding of all of your processes, your cash receipts, your cash disbursements, your payroll, your general ledger, your journal entries. A lot of stuff goes into that. And then typically the second year is when we'll find a lot of stuff because we already have a really strong handle on the processes. And then we're able, you know, it goes kind of both ways. We'll find stuff in the first year and we'll find stuff in the second year like this type of stuff, because of just the sheer magnitude of what we're doing in that first year. And then the second year we have, like I said, we're not doing as much gathering and understanding, and then we can really take a deep dive into it. And then the third year, you know, it'll be something that came up in that year, that would have come up during that year only.
Thank you, I understand. How many other groups our size, and not necessarily a park district, but a government agency, do you do at your firm?
We do probably between 50 and 70.
Okay.
Cities, special district, water districts, park districts, sanitation districts.
Mm-hmm. And how do we compare in general with your findings and the processes that we have in place versus others?
I think you guys do pretty good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes my question.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'm looking at our screen, nothing from Director Cusworth. I did have one follow-up to my question regarding I'm sorry?
We've been over this, you know, the finance committee. So we've already discussed it.
Very good. And another question, there was a recommendation for regular risk assessments. Has that been addressed in some way? Because I didn't notice anything regarding that.
So we review we update our internal control and the different procedures with the auditors every year. I know this year we had a lot of updates because it changed a lot with remote working because of COVID. But so we do review our processes annually. And so that would be where we would capture any of that risk assessment in there. And then we work with the auditors every year on it.
Okay, is there something in here that that notes how that was addressed?
No, because we already do it, but we can add it.
I just said, well, it's because it's listed as a recommendation.
Mhm.
If it's already being done, then why was it included as a recommendation?
Well, so the reason yeah, I get your point. The reason it was found was because we did it. So, but we can add it as a separate
Oh,
line.
okay. Well, I just was curious if you are
Yeah.
doing it, why did it come up?
Oh, probably so we did it next year too and
Okay,
things like that. But
All
yeah,
right.
that's our general practice is to review those internal controls and how we do things every year.
okay. All right, very good. Okay, there's no other questions or comments. We do have 3 items. Let me see if I can get all 3 of these here. 3 recommendations. Number 1 is to accept the audit. Number 2 is to accept the corrective action plan. And number 3 is to approve the update to the policy. Do I have a motion on any one of those? Yes,
Also
Director Ling?
move items 1, 2, and 3 associated with our annual audit report.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that? Director Huffer?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to ask for a voice roll call, roll vote, please.
Director Nichols,
Yes.
Director Cusworth,
Yes.
Director Lang,
Yes,
Director Holt,
Yes,
and Director Huffer.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Now, is that going to conclude our participation? Okay. Well, yeah.
sure.
Yes. Yeah, with that, I will thank our participants from afar from joining us. Veronica and Scott, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your work and working with our team. Look forward to continuing working with you. And
you.
Ms. Smith for your presentation. So you're welcome to join us through the rest of the evening, or if you have other things of interest, you're welcome to sign off, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that brings us to item 9D. No, let's see if I got that right. Yes, 9D. 9B. Okay. 9B.
Yeah, I'm still going. Okay, so starting on page 145, we have the reserves policy. I'm gonna kind of break it down into a few different things. So pages 149 to 154, we have the previously approved version of the actual policy itself and the red line version, which reflects the changes in the balances of each reserve and removes the OPEB reserve that we had closed in the previous year. So those are the changes to the policy itself. The large focus of the reserves has been to address pension and post-retirement liabilities. And page 155, which I'm going to try to share on the screen as well, shows the status of those liabilities. So let's see if I can figure this out without Mark telling me I'm ridiculous. Uh-oh, maybe ridiculous. Which one is the desk? Oh, is that screen? How do I get out of it though? You have to do it? Oh, darn it, sorry.
we have it.
I did. Okay, there we go. Thank you. So. It's nice and big. So what we have here, I was going to walk through the chart just so to review the different pension and post-retirement liabilities. And so this very first column is the pension liability at Calpers for all of our eligible employees. So we've got the total liability, which is calculated every year by Calpers at a little over 70 million. The assets that are at Calpers at 54, the assets that we have in PARS that are dedicated to this purpose, the assets in our pension reserve And then the net pension liability. So this is what's left. If you take that 70 million and then subtract all this, we're short 3.8 million, which means the pensions at Calpers are 94.6% funded. The second column is the retirement enhancement, also known as the retiree medical stipend. It's the same type of setup. We've got the liability that's calculated annually, our assets at PARS, and then the net result is at 98%. And the third is the OPEB, same setup, and that's actually overfunded at 114%. Some reminders on that page is that CRPD does not participate in Social Security. The retirement enhancement is in a closed pool. And then for the OPEB, the retiree medical benefit for managers is not available to employees hired after July 1. And it includes the PEMCA minimum agency contribution for medical. So that's kind of the summary. So in general, all the pension and post-retirement benefit liabilities for the agency are 96% funded. And to put that in perspective, in California, the average is 60% for public agencies. It's usually, it ranges, some are at 40, some are at 80, most are at 60, and we are at 96. So
That's fantastic.
it's fantastic. And that's the hard work of the district, setting aside reserves and setting up these things. So great, great news. The other part of that I wanted to share is on page 170. It's actually showing the performance of the different accounts. And actually, I hear that you all are very familiar with the lovely chart.
Mhm.
So I'm going to open it up just so we know what we're talking about, if I have it. The lovely chart that you all know
Yep.
so well, I
Oh,
hear.
That's not in.
So this is the reminder. This is the second column on our chart, and this is the third column of the chart. So just trying to make reference. So yeah, if you go to page 170, you'll see the performance at PARS. You'll see that the gains from those investments have actually outpaced both the disbursements and the expenses. So they're doing very well. In discussions with Director Holt and Director Huffer, we reviewed the decision for the, oh, go ahead. Oh, I thought so. Was that wrong? Oh, no, that's the end. I'm sorry. The performance of the PARS account starts 160. There you go.
Oh, 160, okay.
So 160 is the rate stabilization. The first column, that's the account to kind of offset the unfunded liability at Calpers. Second column is the one on the left here, and the third column is the one on the right on the chart. And then there's a graph on page 161 that shows that the earnings outpaced everything. We went over the decision when setting up these accounts to use the moderate portfolio with Director Holt and Huffer, and we saw no reason to change that. It's been performing well. And then I was going to go to page 170 to say, what does all this mean? So, I'll walk you through, I'll walk you through this very briefly. We started with the balances as of June 30, 2019, and we had different actions. So this last January, you assigned some funds to the pension stabilization, again, knowing that pensions and post-retirement was a priority. We also had the SC settlement. We assigned some of that settlement money. We had some savings from the fiscal year 1920. We had the typical transfer of the salaries and benefit savings again to the pension reserves. And so as of June 30, 2020, these are the balances for the different reserves. And this is where it matches the fund balance statements in our audit. Now, in this second part is the board actions that we've taken that affect out your budget. So mostly this is the assignment of the SoCal Edison Fund to actions in future years. So we've got some stuff assigned to projects in this fiscal year, some in next, and then you'll remember we used about 660,000 of the unassigned fund balance last year to cover the gap in the budget that we were anticipating due to COVID. So that's reflected there. So we've got, at the end of it, as of right now, we've got 6.4 million in our operating reserve, which covers a little over 3 months of expenses. Typically, you want 3 to 6 months. The claims and liability is at 2.5, equipment 4.78. The vested leave is 1.6, pension at 3.66. Capital facilities reserve is at 0.51, and the exciting part is the unassigned fund balance is at 3.62. This was the fund that we were discussing with Director Holt and Huffer about different options about how to assign that money. I'll remind you that there is a possibility if the state were to have a financial crisis, they do have the ability to come and take unassigned fund balance. So it is a good idea to assign these funds to some purpose. So that was part of the discussion that we had, was assigning a portion of this to allow us to complete Conejo Creek Southwest. And so that was the recommendation. I think we were thinking 3 million would be enough, and I defer to Tom on the specifics of that. And so we wanted to open it up for discussion on that issue and using the funds for that purpose, and that would be the action we were recommending.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. So when it comes to, let me just go back here. The proposed adjustments to the reserve fund balances, with what we see here in this table, I guess it's actually what you're showing us is what's available on the unassigned as well as the rest of these. But are there recommended adjustments aside from the Conejo Creek Southwest option? Because I know the report said it was discussed, but there was really no action or recommendation that I noticed.
Right. So we were discussing that, and also the idea of it being a loan, that it would be repaid. So it wouldn't be to another reserve. It would be to complete the project. And so we didn't have a specific recommendation about it because we wanted to discuss that option in doing a loan. And I can defer to Jim, who spoke to the lawyer.
Yeah, and I actually, so we did talk about this at the committee, and the committee, the Finance and Audit Committee, felt that this was worth bringing to the full board. I would, obviously they were in the meeting, they're the committee, they can express their own views, but I would characterize it as they were intrigued by the idea, maybe even supportive of the idea. One question that was outstanding was whether if it is characterized as a loan from the general fund to our Quimby zone, the park dedication fees that the developers would normally pay. So we have an account that is in zone 4, which is where this park is. If we loan general fund money to that account so that we can do the park, when we are repaid, and who pays us back, it's going to be development. It would be the development in that zone. When they repay that, the law says their money that they pay us has to be used for park improvement purposes reasonably close to their project. But if this were a loan, the question is, when they pay us the money, could we then use their money to pay back the loan into the general fund rather than for the park, because we already built the park. And consulting with the district's council, I did speak with the Mark Sellers, and he said, yeah, that's totally fine. He's just, cover it with paper, make sure you carefully document that it is in fact a loan from the general fund intended to essentially advance future development fees, developer fees, so that we can get the park done now, or reasonably close to when the projects start coming online, and then collect the money from the development in and near the boulevard on the west side, and then repay that general fund back over time. So that's the concept. And staff actually recommends that. I know it's characterized as a loan. I would never say I know what's going to happen with respect to development in the city of Thousand Oaks, because we've heard of all sorts of different ideas over the years on what may or may not happen. But frankly, even if it doesn't happen, and the worst thing that happens is we don't get paid our Quimby for 20 years and people have to live with a park that's completed all that time, it's not the worst outcome, right? So that would be staff's recommendation. And I guess, what are we giving up? Actually, that's a good question. If we didn't have this money available to us, a lot of the discussions that we had earlier in this year is that in anticipating new development, we want to maybe seize an opportunity to buy property that might be available near future dense development. And we, you know, if we spend this money on the park, we'll be short 3 million. You know, we will have $3 million less to try to go acquire a piece of property should an opportunity like that arise. So that's kind of the trade-off. But the RENA numbers, the housing numbers that the city is getting from the state are pretty high. The state laws keep changing to make it more and more there's more sticks coming along with not meeting your RENA numbers. So I think cities throughout California, including Thousand Oaks, will have a harder and harder time saying no to some project development because of the cost of housing, because of homelessness, and then all the state laws trying to address that. So I'm thinking we're probably on the cusp of actually seeing some units be built in town, and the basic, it's different because it's a fair market value formula based thing. But if you shorthand it to say how much does CRPD get per unit for development, if it's in the boulevard area, it's about $10,000 a unit. So if 300 units were to get approved and built in the near future on that part of the boulevard, then we'd get the $3 million back. So that's staff's recommendation.
Yes, Director Huffer.
I just wanted to add briefly to Mr. Friedel's comments when we discussed this in the committee meeting, talking about the alternatives. You know, what do you do with that $3 million? That the $3 million would not buy us much land. And if it did buy us a little bit of land, there's nothing to do with it once we own the land. So then we would have land at Canal Creek Southwest, and we'd have a small bit of land someplace else and no money to do anything with either of those. The advantage to using these funds for completing the development of Southwest, which we've already done most of the planning for, we've got things are pretty much ready to go on that probably would be a better immediate use of those funds. And the other factor that comes into play is that, and I think it was the last meeting that we discussed, that we're looking not in the immediate future, but not too distant future in resuming discussions of some kind of financing mechanism for our big projects. And that if we are working on or have just recently completed Canal Creek Southwest, this would be a good visual for the financing process going forward.
Make some good points. I would agree. That almost see it like greasing the skid, so to speak. You're trying to get this thing moving forward. Good point there.
I have a question.
Yes, Director Cusworth, please go ahead.
So I think that's a good use. I would hate to see our money be taken away from us, that it should be assigned. But how much more money would we need to make the development of Canal Creek Southwest a possibility? Do we have enough in our reserves with this $3 million that we could get started on the project? Or is it going to just sit into a assigned fund for a long time?
Nellie, we already have about $2.5 million in the PDF fund. And so we're thinking it's going to be a little over like about $5.5 million for the project. So if we do the interfund loan, that would give us $5.5 million, and we'll be able to proceed with, we're 99% ready to go and submit it to the city and acquire our permits. So, you know, with that funding available, we could go out to bid in the next few months or so, and hopefully start construction in the summertime.
That sounds really good. I just had one other question. When the Quimby fees start coming in, which I think they will, does that go into an unassigned fund, or do we want to have things in an unassigned fund? Do we want to put it in something else? But if we put it in something else, could it be fluid? I mean, I don't want, the money to be taken away, which I know in schools, if you don't spend your budget in the year, then the school district will just take it. So that makes people sometimes buy things they don't want. But I would hate to have the state take our money, but let's say we put it in another fund, but we don't really want to use it there in the future. I mean, are these funds fluid that we can move them around?
So the way it would work would be we would receive the Quimby funds and they'd be protected because they're assigned for the purpose in that PDF zone. We would then transfer those back to the general fund probably as part of this year-end process. And we would say we transferred those back to the general fund and now it's part of this unassigned fund balance. And we come back to you and ask, like we're doing now, where you would like to assign them.
Okay. But I guess what my question was is, so let's say, okay, we'll assign it here, but then a year later, we're finding another project we would rather have it at. Can you take things out of assigned funds to put into other funds? Is it fairly fluid?
So the board can move funds between the reserve funds. The Quimby funds are for specific regions. So that would be, those are dedicated to that region.
But if it's a loan, we
So
would
it
have
would-
already paid back the loan, right?
Right.
They can
And-
go anywhere, correct?
Yes, correct. It would be part of the general fund unassigned balance that you could distribute as the board sees fit.
Okay, so I guess I'm not understanding or I'm not clear. So let's say we assign it to something. We get in the Quimby funds. We can assign it any place we want. Say we don't want to leave it in the unassigned funds, but then we change our mind in 6 months. Can we put it into another fund? Am I clear? Or do we have to be definite on where we're putting the money as soon as we get the Quimby fees? Or are we just going to keep it in the unassigned fund, general fund?
No, we would probably come back to you all and say, this is the situation, where would you like it to go?
Okay. So I guess then we put it there and there it stays. It doesn't change.
We wouldn't move it without coming to you.
Okay. But if we decided to change, we could. I
Yes.
think we can. I think we can.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, you are correct, Director Cusworth. As Ms. Smith indicated, which I've just heard for the first time, I'm not pretending to be an expert, but the board has the authority to move funds between reserve funds. So if we decided to move it to Fund A and at some time in the future decided to move it to Fund C, that's within our authority to do so. Any other questions? I have a couple of questions. Mr. General Manager, one thing that you mentioned about a loan caught my attention in contrast to Ms. Smith talking about the state having their grips in some of our funds. If we're relocating this unassigned reserve to another fund as a loan, is that considered a use of those funds? Or are they going to say, no, you just loaned it, so it's not really been used. You now are going to have to give it back to us.
So the reference that Ms. Smith, I think, made to the state coming and taking unassigned kind of dates back to when the state of California was going through these really difficult fiscal years. They had basically threatened, in order to close the state budget, they were going to come and sweep unassigned accounts from all special districts. So basically they were going to shake everyone's piggy bank. What were you saving? And you don't need it if you're just saving it. We need it now. And that's when the California Special Districts Association kind of told all special districts, hey, you guys might want to come up with reserve policies, because if you put them in specific different reserve funds for simple purposes, then those different purposes are less likely to be looked at by the state as money just sitting in your account, whereas unassigned looks to them still like money sitting in your account. So when we say the state would come and take it, what's a little different than, say, the dissolution of redevelopment agencies, when the state basically said, which is about that time this all happened, was when the state ended up dissolving redevelopment agencies. I mean, if the state changes the law, they could dissolve recreational park districts altogether. They could just say, we eliminate this section out of the public resources code. There's no longer a CRPD. So, you know, the state can change state laws. What I think would happen if the state really needed money from the district is they would use, if you probably don't remember, but back in, I want to say like 2004, there was something called the local initiative, and it was an acronym for something. But it was a measure that said that in order for the state to borrow money from local governments, it first had to declare a fiscal emergency by 2/3 vote of the legislature. They had to give like 6 months notice, and then it could borrow up to 3 years of some amount of money that was your property tax, and then it would have to be repaid with interest in another 10 years or something. So there's this whole big formula, and it's actually a constitutional amendment is how we like to get things done in California. So the state is pretty limited in coming and taking our money. I would characterize the chance of them actually coming and take or borrowing money under that provision are, you know, knock on wood, but I don't, right now, that's not what I'm seeing on the horizon in the near term anyway, in the next years I can see out. So I think by doing this, really, what we're doing is we're putting money in we're taking money from a very fluid, the most fluid kind of, our general fund unassigned, it's the most fungible fluid money. We're putting it into a PDF development zone fund that will be used for a capital project. So it won't be available, and we'll spend it and we'll build this great park. If we characterize it as a loan, when future developers give us money back for the units that are going in there, we'll have a piece of paper that says, you guys, this park development fund owes the general fund $3 million. And when we get 3 million, we would pay back the loan, and it would go back to 3 million back in the district's unassigned. And then we'd be right where we are now. You'd have $3 million that you could assign to anything you want.
Thank you.
That might have been a long answer.
No,
but-
no, thank you. Thank you. Another question I had, this goes back to the OPEB status, which when I first heard of this back in 2008 and 9, it was almost a 4-letter word. But I see we're at 114%. This is on page 155. And yet our total is 96%, which I know I'm not trying to match percentages here. But if the amount in the PARs is doing better than we expected, is that something that can be reallocated so we can get closer to 100%, or is that not a possibility? Because I know some of these funds, once they were moved, they were locked.
Correct.
Okay.
So this was for those OPEB purposes, so it would need to be used for those purposes. And I would also just remind folks that the asset values are changing.
Yes,
So
yes.
just because it's overfunded right now doesn't mean it won't change. We're
Yes,
still in a
yes.
very, very strong position,
Yes.
but it could change. And then also as disbursements increase from that, it'll change the amount.
Yes. Which brings me to my other question. With that 96%, and I know we have, like you said, it's changing. I know it's always changing. Is this something that you want to target 100%? Is it, no, we're good. 90%, even if we got to 100%, next week we could be at 96%, or the next week we could be at 104%. We're good enough, and you just let it ride until some point where you say, okay, now we need to make a change. And at that point, you would make that recommendation.
Yeah, so if they became way overfunded, I would definitely be coming and say, let's figure out a different way or an additional disbursements or change something. So for example, the Calpers column, if that were to get into the 120% funded or something, I might say, hey, we normally pay our normal cost contributions to Calpers out of our general fund. We don't need to do that, but we can use this trust to pay for that this year. Let's do that instead. Mm-hmm. So I do watch those every year, and I would come with that recommendation.
Okay. Yes, Director Huffer.
If I could just make a comment to follow up on that, 2 things. First of all, the for all of those different funds, the liabilities in the first row are actually as of 2019. We're always a year behind, so that actually our actual liabilities are going to be somewhat higher, and I don't know how much, but they're somewhat higher than what's stated in this graph.
Mhm.
The other thing to keep in mind, the biggest single liability is Calpers, and Calpers has been known in the past and undoubtedly will in the future change their methods of calculating
Yeah.
so that the chance, I'm not an expert in this area, but the chances of being overfunded for Calpers, I'd be somewhere between slim and none.
No, you're absolutely right. They keep, first it was targeting 7.5%, now 7.5%, now they're 6.5% or whatever it is. It's, kind of overcasting. But no, I agree. And the final thing, the 96%, I mean, agencies around the state would just love to be in that position. I mean, I come from organizations where, that 60% level, and a lot of it has to do with public safety. That those parts of it are just draining some of those organizations. But yeah, I'm sure we are the envy of the state, and they probably want to know how in the world we got there. So hats off to the finance committee, to the finance team, Cheryl, predecessors that have put us in this position. I mean, this is a very envious position to be in. So thank you for keeping a close watch. Again, thank you for the finance committee for keeping a close watch on it as well, and bearing with me and others who are seeing some of this for the first time. So thank you. Any other questions or comments on item 9B? Yes, Director Huffer.
I guess just a comment, because the recommendation that they're asking for action on is the financial reserves policy, but there are a number of different pieces in this. And I just want to make sure that the board is aware that one of those pieces is the investment in the trust funds, that when we first set this up a couple of years ago, we recommended the moderate portfolio, and the committee, Finance and Audit Committee, recommends that we continue the moderate portfolio, but there's nothing to say that the board as a whole, at least keep in mind that this is part of the overall reserves policy. And if there was some strong feeling that it should be something different other than the moderate portfolio, that should be addressed before we took action on this.
Yes, and for those wanting to follow Chuck, where he's referencing page 168, that is the PAR's moderate diversified portfolio. So when we were able to elect where to put the money, we could put it anything from conservative to capital appreciation, with moderate being sort of in the middle of the main sort of 5 choices. So you can see on page 168, that's the moderate portfolio objective. It's about 50-50 equity and fixed income.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Director Huffer. And if I can maybe summarize what I understand as far as the proposed adjustments to the reserve fund would be to transfer, or at least the discussion was, I don't see a recommendation, but perhaps someone can make this in their motion, of the $3 million from the unassigned reserve to the CIP reserve. Is that correct?
So we actually wanted you guys to just kind of give us the thumbs up if you felt like you wanted us to go for that, and we will bring that back at the next meeting as an action item. If you want to transfer $3 million from the unassigned fund balance to the Quimby fee in Zone 4, we would actually bring that as an action item at the next meeting.
But again, that's part of the overall financial reserves policy, is that the 3.1, and there are a couple of smaller figures that I don't have in front of me, would be transferred out of the unassigned. So that's part of the overall policy that we're voting on tonight.
Would you like to make that as a motion?
I thought you were going to bring it back and not vote on it.
Well, the policy you're voting on tonight, the actual action of moving the money
that,
would be at the next meeting as an action item. And within what Chuck is saying, within the policy, there is money reflected basically on, where is the red line strikeout?
There are changes to the policy that need.
Yeah, so if you look at the policy, which the red line strikeout version starts on page 152. And you can see the red line strikeout sections, right? So nothing really changes except for
Yeah, we
on the
updated the balances.
The
and then-
balances are updated, like you'll see under the equipment reserve fund, that balance changes from 4.58 to 4.78.
Mhm.
And the only other money one is the vested leave changes from 1.54 to 1.6. And then pension stabilization from 2 to 3.66. And that is because of an existing policy that the board has adopted, which says salary and benefit savings from that fiscal year will go into that pension stabilization. So that was just the automatic transfer of that money to the pension stabilization reserve. So those were the only numeric fund balance changes that's part of the policy itself.
Right, thank you for that clarification. Director Huffer, would you care to make a motion on this policy issue and proposed adjustments?
I would like to move approval of staff recommendation to adopt the district's amended financial reserves policy, including proposed adjustments to reserve fund balances.
Second.
Staff, did you need anything beyond that? Will that suffice? Okay. All right. Can we please have a roll call vote then, please?
Director Nichols,
Yes.
Director Cusworth,
Yes.
Director Lang,
Yes.
Director Holt,
Yes.
Director Huffer.
Yes.
Thank you. That then brings us to item 9C, readoption of investment policy. General Manager Friedel?
I am going to turn this very complex agenda item over to Ms. Smith.
Thank
So
you.
yes, very
Lucky-
complicated.
lucky-
We're recommending no changes. We made one change last year because we wanted to clarify that the PARS investments were exempt from this policy, but still LAIF is performing not as well as Ventura. We're keeping most of our funds in Ventura, and so we don't see any need to change our policy at this time.
Thank you. Any questions of staff or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'm not sure. Oh, I wasn't on that page. Okay, I move that the Board of Directors adopt a district investment policy.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Director Lang will take this one. All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Nichols,
Yes.
Director Cusworth,
Yes.
Director Lang,
Yes.
Director Holt,
Yes.
Director Huffer.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 9D. I still see General Manager Jim Friedel listed as the from, although Ms. Smith is signing it, so.
Yeah, the folks signing it at the end are the ones that write all the words, and I just get to sign
Okay.
the autograph.
Yeah, so just go to the signature.
Yeah,
person.
they're the laboring oar.
Ms. Smith.
So this isn't, this is a update for you all, just to report and file on the financial impacts from COVID-19. So I tried to break it down in a digestible way, but feel free to ask any questions as I go along. We were in the kind of bizarre position where we were required to do a lot of the mandates and rules because of COVID, both as the rules that were given to private businesses and also to governments, and we were not eligible for any of the relief that was provided to businesses and governments. So we're in this weird void where we got all of the rules and none of the funding. So what I first wanted to do was identify the COVID-19 related expenditures where if we had been eligible for those potential relief sources, we would have been able to qualify for reimbursement for those costs. So that's the first, I think, page and a half is going over the labor, the actual materials, the required emergency paid sick leave, and the unemployment insurance that we were out related to COVID. And again, these were if we were if we were not a unique special district, we would have been eligible for reimbursement for those costs. And so that total, I think, is $1.34 million. I also included a little snippet about the different type of relief packages that were there. And I think it ties pretty well with the letter that Jim sent around to the county explaining these costs. The other portion is the lost revenue, which is really difficult one to estimate, but also none of the relief sources are accounting for lost revenue. So no one's getting reimbursed for any lost revenue, but it is a significant financial impact. So I wanted to provide that information. It's very, very hard to measure, as Rochelle can attest. So I tried to do a moment in time by fiscal year comparison, and that's the chart on page 185, where for fiscal year 1920, meaning from July 1 to 11/30, those were the revenues we had received. And the next column is that same time period, July to November, and just seeing the difference there. And so I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the rec division for keeping their expenses in line with that dramatic reduction. So this was just kind of a summary of the different financial impacts of COVID-19 on the district, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Director.
Just
Hopper.
really a question for General Manager. The 1.34 million is that the figure that you provided along with all the other special districts to the county?
Yeah, when we had kind of done our number crunching, we actually came up with, I think, 1.2 at the time. So our number in the estimate, when we say their estimates to the county, was 1.2. It ended up being
Well,
1.3.
since then, the unemployment benefits have been extended, and so that's the change.
Okay. So yeah, it's that is basically our number that we shared, and you guys were part of the VCSBA meeting. So that letter went out on Friday, and so it's been a week, and I have not heard anything.
They haven't said yes yet?
No.
Optimistic.
You've done a lot, you know, for this
Definitely.
relief process. Thank you.
Any other, again, this is just an informational item, correct? Any other questions or comments? I just had maybe an observation more than anything else. I know with the typical emergency, if there is such a thing, and with I guess the one that we're most, maybe too familiar with is wildfire damage. You have this typical routine where 2 or 3 weeks of emergency and anticipation of FEMA funds if it's to that extent. And so you get those forms and you track and you keep close attention of all the records. And, in a matter of months, you'll be able to get all this. And now we've got a situation where it just never ends. So are you in this chasing process where you're trying to track and keep track of this with the hopes of maybe getting some reimbursement in the future, and yet never knowing and just doing the best you can?
Yeah, so Tom is our expert with FEMA, and so there's kind of 2 tracks. The FEMA part of the COVID emergency ended back in September. That closed. 15. Yeah, so there was eligible type of expenditures that we might have qualified for under FEMA. That ended back in September. They basically wrap it up, give us all your money, you're done. And it was for very, very specific limited purposes. So I think the total for that came to, Tom knows, 180.
About 130,000.
130. So our FEMA claim might be, 130 something. And whether anyone, including us, gets paid FEMA on this massive nationwide sort of thing is anyone's guess, whether they actually pay out on that. This is actually a separate tracking that Melissa and Tom are doing, and Rochelle, everybody is doing their part under the coronavirus relief funds, the federal funds. That was that separate special legislation. So there's actually 2, and I can't remember the acronym. One is the CARES, right? CARES Act, and the other one was what was the other one called? There was 2. FFRCA. So there were 2. And so what happens is the Treasury issues guidelines and guidance as to what would be eligible expenses. So this is what we are keeping track of as potentially eligible expenses under the Treasury guidelines. So what happens though is that then the feds give all this money to the states, and then the states give it to the counties, and they kind of at the county level say, and then you guys can give it to your political subdivisions as you deem fit, right? So now the county's holding a big chunk of money and is told divvy it up around however you want, right? And so our county got 147 million, and I don't know their exact numbers, but I am told that between all of the things they've done already, they've exceeded that number. Vaccinations, or that's what's now happening, but all the testing that the county was doing and all the different pots of relief money they've given out. So whether the county is inclined to address the needs of special districts when they were not, special districts were not mentioned in the federal legislation, and the states didn't mention it. They just said units, sort of the Treasury regulation said you could give it to units of local government. And so a generic sort of title. And so we're arguing, and Kern County actually did create a pool for special districts to apply for. They have something like 80 districts in Kern County, and they made a pool of $2 million. So we, kind of taking this back up to our Ventura County wide, we have about 28 special districts, and our estimated cost from March to December collectively is about 4 million. So if the county of Ventura says, hey, yeah, we can actually allocate 4 million among all those, we're great. And pretty much most of this would all be covered. If they say, you know what, we only have $1 million pool, then we'd get some fraction, or they do a first come first serve, or some sort of process of, we don't know what process, we don't know if they'll say yes or no. Part of all this crazy exercise we're doing could be valuable though, because there is a sense and hope that special districts will be recognized in a future federal relief bill that might even be retroactive to let you capture some of this stuff you've already done. Or even if it's just going forward, we actually know how to pay attention to these categories of expenditures. So long story, but that's kind of why we're going through all this.
Yeah. No, I know it's long and complicated and ever changing, but thank you so much. Okay, so this is just an informational item. So if any questions, we'll move on. Next is reports and announcements. We have 10A, B, C, and D. I think these are also informational items unless there's any questions, or if any staff had anything to add to that. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 11, department reports to Parks Division.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Nichols and members of the board. I can't top anything Melissa did tonight, so I've got nothing tonight, but I'm available to answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. 11B, Recreation Division. Report. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Director Huffer.
I'm not let you get away that easily.
Okay.
Just very briefly, with the total lack of rain that we've had, looks like we're going to get. How far are we off on our water projections for the last several months?
As far the projections, actually, we're as far as our usage per acre, we're still below our target. I think it was sent to the board last week, maybe about 396, I believe, 391, 396. I can't remember off the top of my head, but our target's 503, so we're actually doing fairly well. And a lot has to do with, I mean, rain is a big part of, or lack of rain is a big part of it. But I think that the efforts we've made in the past few years of the turf reductions and the different practices that we've made and the recycled water, it has really helped us stay underneath our target.
Okay, and then
The rainfall.
And actually, Ventura County is less. It's only 1 inch for Ventura.
Yeah,
County,
we're. I mean, I got here, but yeah, we're not doing really good at all as far as our average.
Aren't we gonna get 3 days? We're hoping.
Showers tomorrow. And one other question, just
sure.
I know we got the email, but any estimate as to whether there was significant damage from all these winds that we've had the last few days?
It depends on your definition of significant. But No, I mean, nothing that we, nothing, for lack of word, no loss of life, no loss of operations. It's just a lot of extra work, a lot of cleanup, loss of mature trees that we'll just have to go back and plant some different ones. But just big pain in the butt, and a lot of work to be done to get everything cleaned up and back and useful for the public.
On that topic, one item mentioned in Jim's report was a shade structure in this small dog park.
Those are those. It's not a very expensive. Yeah, it's just an umbrella. So one of the projects that we have coming up, hopefully, that we'll have the board award in the next few months, is we'll be adding 2 shade sail structures about the size of Willow Bend, and they're like hardy shade structures, not something that would be in your backyard like the ones that we currently have. So that's not a
biggie.
No, it's a minimal cost.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. Next is our Recreation Division report.
Thank you, Chair Nichols and members of the board. Just a couple of things. Director Holt asked the question about the presentations earlier. So I do want to let you guys know that when we have special presentations, we've been doing this for a while now, and we've actually got it under control now. We actually separate the presentation out. So when you go to the website, you see the board meeting, which is the whole board meeting, or you can go to another line that shows just the presentations and it says what it is. So what I'll do is I will make sure, the Director Holt, that we actually push that out in social media with a link to that special presentation. Just say, hey, just in case you didn't see the special presentation at the board meeting, they want to know more about therapeutics, here it is. So we are doing that now. So that is there. And Director Cusworth, just to follow up on what Devin gave you, I did pull up the numbers while we were in the meeting. We do that enrollment report about 4 times a year for you guys. And for therapeutics, the last one that actually had kids in it was in about 2019. It was about 87%. So Devin was about right on, saying about 90% of our folks that participate in therapeutics are in district. So just wanted to share that with you. You guys should have got this magazine. I don't know if you noticed. Director Huffer was in there. So a nice little picture of him. And then
What magazine is that?
It's on your dais.
Yeah.
Oh, that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
okay, yeah.
From page
I
11.
got that from the Global Center.
Page
Yeah,
11. is
you went to the
published.
event. So because the Wellness Fest actually did happen, you guys probably noticed that your rec highlights are now in your board packet, so you can read that ahead of the meeting. So I'm gonna probably have a lot less to talk about in the future. But I did want you to know, because the Wellness Fest did happen, they handed out 385 bags and lunches on that Wednesday, and they had 65 people that were promotional items, and 65 promotional items in the bags that they gave out to the folks, and they just really enjoyed it. Also, just a little update, we were supposed to have a movie, Frozen 2. Unfortunately, the winds have been so crazy that our 40-foot screen doesn't like the wind. So the last couple of movies have actually been canceled. So we've actually decided to just keep it boxed up for a couple of months until the winds are really gone, because we don't want staff getting hurt and whatnot. So we'll see that come back out probably in April.
Plus you need electricity. How many?
Yeah, and then that goes to our facilities. Most of our facilities were closed the last couple of days. Today's the first day they were back up. The pool took a little extra long because they had to get the chemicals and all the pool stuff back up and running. So that was going on. We did have a vaccine. The county opened the vaccine clinic at the Global Center, and our staff have been amazing out there. There's lots of questions that the seniors have. They are struggling a little bit with the processes. If you see the emails from Ventura County, they're trying their best to get things up and running and fixed and a little more organized. But our staff just today answered between 400 and 500 phone calls from people that have questions, concerns, can't get online, can't do this, can't do that. Where's their appointment? They went through, they got told no appointment. So the staff over at the Global Center are really rock stars in the services that they offer and help our seniors with. So I told you that. I just put on your dais this afternoon, we got our results back from our fall winter program session. And I won't cover a bunch of it. It's all nice there. James did it beautifully for me. So it's all nice in color. The general gist is 90% of the people think we are doing a good job. We're keeping safe. We're meeting standards with COVID. They feel comfortable. We had a 7% response rate, which is really good. So staff do get, and people do write specific positive things and or things that we could do better. That does get passed down to the supervisors so that it's specific to their department based off of the class that these folks took. So we can go back to staff and we can talk to them, tell them what a great job they did if they were named in it, or say, hey, we need to get, you're an instructor, this was a concern, so let's get better at it. And then the last thing I just want to kind of tell you is the Caneo Las Virgenes Future Foundation is having their senior congress on February 24th. And so there is a flyer for that, or you can go online to their website and you can register for that. There's some really great speakers this year. So they usually have really good speakers. And I sit on the board, so that's why I just thought I'd share it with you. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Yes, Director Hupper.
Yeah, Rochelle, you said all these calls were coming in on the vaccination thing. Are they coming in here to Hillcrest or to Global?
They're going to Global, but Global had no electricity. So the phone was being transferred to Patty's cell phone. So they were all going to Patty's cell phone until I figured that out. And then I had them come here. We actually had 4 staff on the first day, 4 staff working phones trying. So Jody, Aline, Rosie, and Carol were all working the phones trying to answer the calls. And so they did that for a day. And then this morning, electricity was back at Global. So Global today had the 400 to 500 calls.
So they get to handle all those. Plus, they're going to start getting all the phone calls about taxes pretty shortly. So
yes, they
need help over there.
Thank you for the report. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Next is our Management Services Division report.
I somehow
I'm sure
have
you-
more to tell you.
I was going to say, I'm sure there's something else you forgot to tell us. Yes, please go ahead.
Just very briefly, the union did send us a letter requesting information in order to prepare for the upcoming bargaining session. So we'll keep you updated on that. It's just an FYI. And then also you've been given the exciting budget calendar for the year. So you'll know which board meetings we're going to be addressing budget issues. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions for Ms. Smith? Thank you for your report.
Yes.
General Manager Jim Friedel.
Yes,
sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair Nichols, members of the board. Just to kind of amplify the Global Adult Community Centers of Vaccination Center, Mark, I don't know if you can quickly go on that VC website. I just kind of want to talk the board through. So here's the website that everyone in Ventura County would go to, at least if they wanted the county vaccine. And if you scroll down, there's going to be right there. There's a register for the vaccine, and you scroll down, and you're going to enter in. Right. So keep scrolling down, scroll down, and then there's 2 things you're going to check. You're going to check the box that you're 75 and older and that you're going for your first vaccine. Oh, is it shut down? Oh.
hopefully Monday or when they get the more vaccines.
Got it. Okay. Well, I was going to show you how Global appears on the county's website, but that's now shut down. So, and we are told that it's a vaccine availability issue. So they have to they're kind of told us it's a week by week sort of, it's really hard for them to schedule people because they don't know how many vaccines they're going to get until the week they show up. So it's you know, asking everyone to just be patient and understanding that they're trying to roll out something that's really uncertain. But it is nice that the Global Adult Center would be available for that. And we estimate that it'll probably be used as a vaccination center through like June. So
March for sure.
yeah,
and possibly to June, depending on
so
when we can gather.
right. So that when we can start to gather, the seniors can gather inside again, then we transition back to a senior center. So that's what's going on there. And then rec highlights. Yeah, Rochelle will have plenty to talk about. I just thought actually they were so good. She and James and all the staff that contribute have, you know, elevated the rec highlights so that I thought it'd be really great in terms of just communications with the public if they got to see in our printed packet every week what's going on. So that's why they're there now. But yeah, Rochelle won't be afraid to tell you about what's going on top of that. And then we will bring an item back at the next meeting about the loan. So thank you for that. And then the first meeting in March, I think, I don't have my agenda planner, but the first meeting in March, we actually are trying to schedule no business, but we do want to have a meeting and we're going to dedicate it to like the awards night. And if you may not have totally noticed it, but we did do part-time awards last year, didn't we? Did we get those in before COVID? I think we might have gotten.
Yeah, I think
So I think we did part-time, but we've actually skipped a bunch of service awards. And so so we have the regular part-time, you know, annual service awards that we normally do in the spring. And then we also have a year's worth of sort of pent-up service awards. So we kind of wanted to just make it a big fun awards night, the first board meeting in March. So we're kind of adjusting work to keep that night open. So it'll be a fun night, it'll be a meeting, but it'll just be a lot of awards.
Very nice.
So that's kind of what we're thinking. And then Monday, I won't be here because I did get on the LA County website and I am taking my mom to Dodger Stadium on Monday to get her vaccination shot. So I'm going to be gone. Yeah, hopefully it's just Monday. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Yes, Director Lang.
Actually, as a comment on the COVID, I have UCLA insurance. I was told in December that I'd get it in January. And I've gotten 2 emails subsequent to that, but unfortunately they're part of LA County. They are based out of their Westwood. So then I went to our Ventura County per your information and saw that those 3 days were already full. And then Judy got a notice that all you have to do is walk up to a pharmacy that's on the Ventura County list and they'll put you on a waiting list. So that's what we did yesterday. So we went to the bonds on the bonds on Chance and Moore Park and go to the pharmacy. And I would assume all the pharmacies on that Ventura County list have that same option. So you just walk in, they put you on the list, and then they notify you later when your appointment is.
Thank you. Mr. Friedel, I just was noting the activities that we've had since we last met. We had a fire, public safety power shut off, windstorm damage, and a presidential inauguration. They were all outdistanced by COVID. But I guess we survived all those because they didn't make your top 5 list. So I guess
after doing Borderline and Woolsey, just all that stuff's just peanuts. Yeah, that's no. Tom covered, the tree damage and all that. So yeah, we definitely were scrambling, and the centers were closed and doing crazy stuff. So it's scrambling and changing gears and doing stuff starting to feel normal.
That was kind of my point. Is you hear all these emergencies, they don't even raise to the top. It's just,
Yeah, I didn't even remember that we had, on the night of the fire, we were helping Red Cross set up.
That's right. That's right.
For about 3 hours until it got turned off.
Yeah. It's just like, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, we thought we were done with 2020. Didn't we?
Yeah. Deja vu all over again. Yes. Okay, director reports, follow-up reports on meetings, conferences, and attendance. Attended, item 11E, Director Holt, do you have anything for this
I'm trying
evening?
to remember, I just do what I do. I mean, from one meeting to the next, you know, but I can't, well, we had our meeting with, anyway, I guess nothing much more.
All right, Director Huffer.
Yeah, we had the finance subcommittee
Finance
meeting, and I'm part of the organizing group for the tax program, and we've had a number of email exchanges and Zoom meetings in hopes that we're going to be able to, at least initially, it's going to be, the tax program is going to be almost all virtual. Clients are going to scan their materials in, and then the preparers will be doing it from home. We're hoping to be able to start February 15th, so.
Very nice. Okay. Thank you. And again, thank you for that service. It's a definitely
And-
community benefit.
And a nice photo in the magazine, Chuck.
Yes. Action photo.
Yes, that's what's working.
Director Cusworth.
I met with Claudia de la Pena, as I talked at the last meeting, and we talked a little bit about homelessness and what the city's goals are to work with that. And I thought it was interesting also with, and then Jim and I are probably going to be putting something together for our next meeting sometime, either the first or second meeting in February, to kind of update the board a little bit on the homeless situation in Thousand Oaks. And then I thought it was interesting when I first became a member of the board, I went to their stand-up comedy night one night just to see what it was like. Of course, it was in person. And then we went another time and it was from your car. And then last weekend we watched it at home streaming, and you know, they just keep going. I'm really impressed with Jason Love and how he's making this continue. I think he said he had 227 people logged in streaming, and he had his comics coming from all over the place, and there were some people that streamed in from Canada. So maybe he'll continue doing this. I think it's a pretty good service. The Stagecoach Inn has a diseased tree, and CRPD has given them another oak tree to replace it. Some of you may remember that tree. It's very large. It was dedicated to Guy Runyon, and CRPD's tried very hard to save it, but it's finally had to be taken down. And I think they've been wanting to do it for about 8 months, but that's going to happen this Friday, if it didn't already blow down, but I didn't hear that it did, but it was in a pretty sad state. So they've been filming different things of having a blessing and having talks about it and on. And I talked with Barbara Tejada a little bit about some of the things that they're doing over at Chumash also. And I think that's it. Oh, I went to that one meeting that you all went to, the Ventura County Special Districts, the short one, where Jim was kind of telling us all about, the program of trying to get the money back. I think that's it.
Great job, Jim.
Thank you. Director Lang.
Yes, and I did notice Chair Nichols was at Kathy's retirement event, as was I held right out here, and had about a 4-hour, 3.5+ hour Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy meeting a couple Mondays ago, and that's it.
Very good. Thank you. In addition to the celebration for Kathy, I had a online meeting with the California Association of Recreation and Park Districts. There was a special meeting to appoint a replacement board member. Mark, help me with his last name from CME. Johnson. Mark Johnson was not successful in his reelection, so he was no longer able to participate in the board. So the board appointed Gigi Bannister, who's a director with the Rim of the World Recreation Park District, to fill out the remainder of his term. And we followed that up with a finance committee meeting. And let's see, then I had the planning meeting with the general manager and administrators on activities for 2021. We'll see how that unfolds. And then I've had a couple of phone calls with new council member Kevin McNamee is to kind of chat on some common interests. We crossed paths during our campaigns 2 years ago when he was also running, so it was easy just to reconnect with him and establish that connection with the city council. So I think it's well worth us to reach out to our fellow elected officials. Yes, Director Lang?
Yes, I'd like to compliment Chair Nichols on the article that appeared in today's Guardian newspaper. I thought it was very well done and appreciate you taking the time and making the effort to get that word out.
I didn't get mine today.
I haven't got mine yet either, so
Oh, okay.
I think it takes them 2 or 3 days to get all those out. Thank you, Director Lang. It's a chore and a challenge and a pleasure to write those all at the same
I'm
time.
sure.
They're good.
Uh,
You do well.
My wife edits them for editorial purposes. And then I also have our general manager critique them for fact checking. So it's a three-way effort in most parts. So thank you, Mr. Friedel, for your contributions to that. You always add some very important facts and figures and checks me on that. But I enjoy doing that. So thank you. Hope to continue doing that, trying to elevate the awareness of the district. Okay, item number 12, request for status reports and items for subsequent agendas. Yes, Director Holt.
Hi, this isn't really that, but I just didn't know where to come in on this. And many of you know Joe Palucci. The pool table store was, his and his wife's, and he died this past week. And I mean, I've known them with different charities and everything. But one reason I'm bringing it up, and I'd love to have the meeting adjourned in his memory. He and his wife showed up at every Starlight Ball because they made donations to the Starlight Ball. And I'm not sure what other donations, they've made donations all across the area. So I'm not sure where else they might have donated that reflects on us. But the Starlight Ball, and they showed up, the two of them, at every event. And he had been ill, he had been going downhill rapidly for some time. But he did die this past week. So if we can adjourn in memory of Joe Palucci, and I appreciate it.
Good, good.
Thank you for
And
bringing that
as
to our
some of
attention.
you know, they started out at the Jan's Mall, then
With PTS.
Marketplace.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
With pool tables. Yes, thank you. Any other requests? Yes, Director Huffer?
Again, it's not really an agenda item, but a couple of the directors mentioned having spoken with our counterparts at the city, and maybe I missed it somewhere along the way. We'd talked about updating the contact list for city and for the school board. So perhaps you could email those out to us.
Well, where are you going to go?
Yeah.
I call them,
Yeah.
talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You can always meet at a park.
Yeah, and keeping 6 feet
Ah.
apart with masks.
Turn on my hearing aids.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to item 13. Mr. Segedy, do we have any straggling customers from the public? All right, thank you, sir. No executive closed session?
No, we don't.
Okay, so with that, we're going to adjourn. And Director Holt, did you want to add anything for Mr. Palucci?
I think what I said is, that the two, Pat and Joe, just have been so active in the community, and it was kind of sad, but it was a very long downhill roll for him. But so.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I do remember at the Starlight Bowl that they did purchase a table.
Yeah,
So I
well,
know
they
that
both
they did that.
donated,
every year.
Yeah.
And they show up.
Yes.
They showed up.
So, yeah, they've been active in the community for years. I too remember meeting Joe at the pool table store at the Jan's Mall many, many years ago.
Yep.
Yep,
So,
I bought something there when we moved here 40 years
Yeah,
ago.
we've furnished
I
many of
just saw her
our furnishings are
recently,
from
so
pool table store.
It's been tough on.
Okay. Thank you again for bringing that to our attention. And with that, we will adjourn in the memory of Joe Palucci, again, one of our distinguished citizens and contributors that really made the Park District what it is. And that's, again, the essence of who we are and what we are. So thank you to the Palucci family, and our best go out to his family. So.
Huh. Well, I knew him from other things. So.
Yeah. And thank you to the Palucci family, and our best with them. So with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
And